Welcome, everyone, to the Image and Wire Show. My name is Jake Fishman, and I am the host of the show and also the editor of the Image and Wire. And I'm really excited to have Ben Panter from Blackford Analysis with us today. Ben founded Blackford, has a really great level of insight into the technology and business and behavior around adoption of AI. And I'm really excited to talk with him and share some of that knowledge with all of you. So welcome, Ben.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here, buddy. One of the things that's really interesting as I was kind of preparing for our call is I realized that you have a PhD in astrophysics and you were an astronomer. And those are two things that those weren't on my career list when I was trying to figure out what my major was in college. I'm very curious about that and then how you made your way into imaging AI.
As an astronomer, I was always more interested in the kind of the data and the algorithms and how do you get information out of that data. And my supervisor and I developed a really quick way of understanding the history of star formation in galaxies. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, there were some huge surveys coming online that took the number of galaxies that we had data on from about a few hundred to over 1 million. And the combination of a really fast algorithm and 1 million spectra meant that we could build the star formation history of the universe and really understand that in great depth. So the kind of the sum total of my work is that big galaxies formed all their stars early on. Small galaxies are still forming stars. And in fact, that was enough to get a Nature paper out of. So I was quite happy with that. And, a fellowship at Max Planck. But I'll be honest, I think I'd kind of done what I wanted to do in astronomy because you don't get a lot of feedback from galaxies. And I thought it would be great to apply this know-how, this technology, this kind of approach into other fields. Mm-hmm. And I looked at various different industries, looked at seismic imaging for oil and gas, cell phone data, banking. This was back in 2007 when banking and astrophysics were a good combination, not so good anymore. But really the thing that piqued my interest was working with medical physicists at the Western General Hospital here in Edinburgh. They were looking at a big cohort of patients, which they scanned with an MR every year. And basically the first thing they had to do was align these scans so they could normalize the data. And that took them 20-25 minutes per patient, per volume, every time they did it. And they'd been scanning these folks every year for 20 years. And what we could do was take that 20-minute process and bring it down to a minute. And they said, well, that's interesting. And then we did another innovation that took it down to a second. And they said, this is amazing. And it really changed a lot of things for them. And then the radiologists that they worked with got wind of it and said, we need this in our workflow. We need to see this in our clinical life. And seeing people with that energy for what you're doing, as a scientist, you don't generally get a lot of thanks for what you're doing. But when you see that you can really make an impact on people's lives, that becomes quite exciting. And that's really what fomented my move from astronomy into medical. I think 2010, we formed Blackford. Initially, 3 of us sat at the back of the Royal Observatory canteen. Eventually, we got a little office there as well. And we built this algorithm, right, that could do what's now called registration, aligning the current and prior images. Oh, and what that does is it allows a radiologist to work more efficiently when they're doing the comparison, trying to work out whether something's better, worse, stayed the same. It turns out that building an algorithm takes a couple of smart people, a couple of years. But building the technology stack that allows you to integrate that into radiology workflow, that is a much bigger problem. And once you've solved it once, you find that there's another vendor, that there's another way of doing it, that there's another network speed, that there's a system of hospitals with outsourced reading, and the complexity just grows and grows and grows. And we built a really great platform to do that. And in 2016, we identified that we could potentially bring other products onto that platform too. Originally, we thought that we would be the ones that developed all these different algorithms, but we recognized that we had this incredible understanding of how you integrated them into radiology workflow. Now, this was 2016, and we started talking about this with various other companies, got some partners signed up, and it turned out to be quite good timing because around 2017, 2 letters started appearing everywhere, A and I, and we worked out that all of these companies would have the same problems, the same challenges of it's straightforward to build an algorithm, but trying to deliver that into a healthcare environment is a massive problem, massively complicated, massively different kind of expectations from people that are trying to build these things to people that actually want to use them.
Yeah.
And trying to bridge that gap was really what we pivoted to back in 2015, 2016. So today, I guess we've got 70 employees between the US and our base in Edinburgh. Our servers see 25 million studies per year. We're in use in hundreds of radiology sites, imaging centers, radiology groups, hospitals, and a massive curated marketplace of applications that we sell through that platform. A long journey from astronomy to medical imaging, really.
That's fascinating. And it seems, well, I'm sure you might not have been getting feedback back when it was the stars, but there's plenty of opportunities for feedback and learning from it now. What are some of the things when you are, say, talking to a radiology group or hospital? What are the types of things that they're looking for or concerned about?
Sure. I mean, I think that the reality is that AI and medical imaging is still relatively immature, right? And that manifests in a number of ways. So first of all, the medical imaging AI market, it is incredibly complex and busy and loud.
Yeah.
If you speak to any clinician, they're getting called every week by yet another AI vendor that maybe has a solution that's going to work for them, maybe doesn't, but it's so noisy. How do you cut through that noise?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a huge amount of investment in medical imaging AI companies. There are literally hundreds of vendors. Now, what we've found is that there's only a very limited relationship between the amount invested in a vendor and the clinical value of their product. And really, you need an efficient way to understand that market, to kind of do the evaluations on the vendors, on your case mix, your radiologists, your referrers, and whether it's going to fit. As we kind of covered earlier, that workflow piece is another key challenge. So you can't just throw an AI finding at a radiologist and hope they catch it and do something useful with it. You have to be really aware of all the existing ways that they interact with the IT environment in their normal practice and how you can enhance that, right? There's no kind of replace the whole thing for this particular application. It just doesn't work. You have to work with what the folks already have. If you think about the combination of those two pieces, first of all, trying to work out what is it that a radiology group wants from this massive AI marketplace, and how do they deploy it? Not just integrating into IT systems, but the contractual stuff, negotiating with IT to get the hardware installed to be able to put the software on, getting security assessments done, getting access into the hospital. All of this stuff is kind of lots and lots of work.
Right.
And really, that's the particular challenges that Blackford sets out to solve. That we've got a curated marketplace of products that we really understand, and we understand how they fit into individual environments, and for a given site, what's their case mix, which are the combinations of algorithms and products that they need to be able to address those needs, and then how do we actually get that into their site? Is there a channel that we can use to accelerate the adoption? Is there a smarter way to contract? So pretty much a hospital buys the Blackford platform, there's a contract, and then for any additional product they want to put through it, one-page contract amendment. So we've handled all the downstream security assessments, all the integration challenges, and really we're trying to pull all that together into the platform. So a technical solution and a business solution.
In the absence of a platform, if a practice or a hospital was to take on multiple algorithms, how would they be doing it?
So I think it's a tractable problem to do one a year, right? And it's just any standard IT procurement exercise. So you build your committee, you assess the options out there, you work out which one you want to go with. You then start talking through how we're going to integrate. You probably find some showstoppers there. Maybe you have to change vendor. You then start building the team internally that can start to think about how you do this stuff. Yeah. And it's not just the technical integration, it's how does it integrate into your billing systems? How do you make sure that the modality protocols are updated? How do you make the referrers aware that this new service is available? Like I say, realistically, a large hospital or health system could probably do one, maybe two of these a year. But there's a whole load of risk, right? Because until you actually get these products deployed in your environment, working on your data, working with your radiologists, providing value to your referrers, you really don't know whether it's going to be successful or not.
Right.
And it's entirely likely that you're going to go out, you're going to pick a vendor, you're going to deploy, you're going to go through that year of effort to get it up and running, and you're going to find actually this isn't quite what we expected.
Right.
Now, so that's the case without a platform. If you have got a platform, effectively what you're doing is making that whole process more efficient, because someone else has already done all of that work to do all the integrations, to make sure the vendor security assessments are done, to curate the different vendors and understand what their strengths and weaknesses are and how they might fit to your problem. And that's where the platform really works, right? So again, technical components sorting out all of those problems, but also the commercial problem of how you get all the contracting done, how do you accelerate deployment, how do you get to the point where you could evaluate 5 or 10 different products per year, and that the cost of failure is minimized. And that's really the platform approach. Sorry, that was a lot of a sales pitch there, but
yeah, no, it makes perfect sense to me, and I can't imagine just the opportunity costs involved with trying out a solution for a whole year after a committee and integration, all those things, and then finding that.
I think the reality is that if you talk to anybody in healthcare and you say, "So you've got some spare time?" Pretty uniformly no, right? And especially in times of pandemic, when you're trying to juggle everything else that's going on. I mean, there just isn't the resource to be able to go, oh yeah, let's try these 5 products, and PACS admin, will you sort all these out? And let's talk to hospital IT. I'm sure they'd love to do 5 more vendor security assessments. It just isn't possible to test the market and to test these applications efficiently without some kind of coordinated approach.
Right. Outside of COVID-related algorithms, have you found that there are certain types of AI tools that have really resonated over this last year and a half?
Yeah, and I think that the maturity of the market is increasing all the time. And I think that initially people were really focused on applications within radiology. And I think that you have to think about reimbursement and how that works in a radiology department. So there's basically 2 levers. One is the technical component of reimbursement. So what do you get from actually acquiring the scan? Can you drive more value from your existing capital investment? So can you get more from your modalities, basically? And can you optimize that? Can you make sure there's no missed appointments, all those kind of edges? And then the other element is the professional component. So that's the radiologist being paid to do the clinical read of the study. And maybe you can make the radiologist more efficient. Challenges there, typically they're in a radiology group, which is contracted to the hospital. So you're asking the radiology group to invest in a product so they get the benefit rather than the hospital group. So really within the radiology department, it's quite hard to find new money, right? It's a zero-sum game. You can share some efficiency gains with the radiology team. You can potentially increase the throughput of the radiology department in terms of their ability to acquire scans or optimize the way they're doing that. But the place that, fundamentally you're diverting revenue from someone else's pocket, and therefore there's a natural cap on what you can achieve within radiology. The place where I think there's a lot more value, excitement, and growth is looking at downstream value. We're trying to think how you link benefit to patients, to referrers, to the overall health system, to a finding that you took via an AI algorithm working on an imaging study. And that is really where we see a huge amount of activity. And if you look at the kind of the classic exemplars of this, it would be in stroke and thrombectomy, where you effectively build a whole parallel infrastructure for moving information around the hospital that bypasses other things, because it's really urgent and it's incredibly high value to get the right patient for a thrombectomy at the right time. And life-changing for that patient, let's be clear.
For sure.
But I think that the real opportunity is when you can link a cost in radiology to a value downstream. And I think that's the kind of key area that people are now starting to really think of, rather than what do we just do within radiology. It's really key to try and help radiologists be more efficient and to avoid burnout. But I think that the really big opportunity is how can you add more value to the outputs of radiology that couldn't otherwise be achieved. And radiology groups take benefit from that, but the downstream referrers and the patients and the overall health system, the payers, all benefit from that immensely.
Awesome. And we might have just answered this question, but I'm curious. So obviously, venture capital is playing a giant role in AI right now. Some of these bets are really going to work, and some, are worth a shot. And I'm curious, say if you had your own venture capital firm, what would you be looking for in AI players who would be worth your investment?
So obviously, excluding the fantastic concept of a platform that brings all this together and makes it efficient and allows that.
We can include that.
Okay, so that would be number one, obviously. But I think that the clinical applications that are most exciting to me at the moment are, so we've got a few triage pieces, right? Stroke, cardiac arrest, other areas around there that are really exciting. The place that we haven't really got to yet is population health, right? Where you have potential to serendipitously detect something that's wrong with a patient through another scan. And that allows you at a much earlier stage to do some kind of intervention that's going to massively change the outcome for that patient. Now, massively changing the outcome for that patient is incredibly important for the patient, but it also has a huge impact on overall cost of care. If you can intervene before someone has that fall, before they develop diabetes, before whatever it is happens, the impact for the overall healthcare spend, the patient outcomes, et cetera, is massive. And as we move away from fee-for-service into value, that becomes more and more central to everybody's thinking.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, that's the exciting area, but it's horrendously complex, right? And if you look at how you fund that, at the moment, you do the hard yards of building the business case, working with stakeholders, understanding how to deliver and measure that value and how to share that information with the customer. In the longer term, this is kind of where reimbursement starts to kick in. And you see where we're bridging the gap with things like NTAP, with T-codes, the CPT class 3 stuff, Medicare coverage of innovative technology, all of these different mechanisms that allow you to start to join the dots, right, and make it easier. But until that's there, it's a long sales process with many stakeholders. It's trying to build a portfolio of value from lots of different products, because no single vendor has all of this stuff.
Right.
And I think that for me is the real opportunity and where I see excitement and real potential for return. So if I was a VC, that population health picture and how you bring it all together is really where I think the future is.
It's really cool you said that. And there's been some really cool things on the business side and then on the academic side, just of what you can do with all these scans that are already out there. And I guess it'll be a long and winding path there, but I think you're right. And the payers should be able to get behind it, right? At least eventually.
Yeah. I mean, I think the interesting place to start is where you have a combined payer provider network, where you don't have to go out to a third party and try and link the dots together. You've actually got one entity that, if you can get through all of the technical, bureaucratic, political hurdles, you've got a really great solution. That's a real business development sales challenge to try and align all of these different interests within a health system.
Right. Probably not a 2-month sales process.
I'm not sure that anything in healthcare is.
Right. Exactly. I wanted to talk about kind of something more forward-looking about what it would take for AI to have its greatest impact. And I think we kind of touched on part of that with essentially, opportunistic screening with, through population health. But are there, just in general, in order for AI to have its greatest impact on imaging, is there a path towards that, or what do you think will have to happen?
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a kind of a picture in my mind of what's easier and what's harder when you're talking about AI. So we have a real leg up in medical imaging because the AI technology that we use has been developed for multiple different industry verticals. So you can get the absolute best deep learning libraries, etc., for free. TensorFlow, etc., ImageNet, all of this kind of stuff is out there. So the underlying technology is all pretty much there. And there's a good number of people out there that know really well how to apply that. Then you've got the next stage up, which is data. And data isn't free, but it's accessible, right? Hospitals are absolutely full of it. You need to be very cautious about whether you have the rights to use that data. You need to have some kind of agreement between the patients and the health system and the person that's developing that algorithm. But the data's all there, and actually annotation, it's a tractable problem, right? There are companies out there are people out there that are very willing to help annotate data. You then go a tier up and you come up to clinical context. So understanding why you might want to measure something, why you might want to detect something, and kind of get that piece right. And again, there's 38,000 radiologists in the US, last count. There's a good number of them who are really interested in this stuff and will help you do it. And looking at the downstream value, that piece that we mentioned earlier, a lot of health systems are really looking at how you build this network together, how you get all that information into one place. So there's a lot of excitement and interest there. The next tier up is the integration layer, and that's really hard. It takes a long time. Luckily, Blackford does that for you, so that's all fine. But the top tier, the real challenging bit is this business case for adoption. And trying to link all the dots together. And I had a great conversation with Christoph Wald at Leahy a month or so ago, and he referenced an example for lung cancer screening where Leahy saw that there was tremendous opportunity to go out and CT screen people that had some particular history of smoking and do that CT scan, check for nodules, check for lung cancer, and the overall benefit would be sufficient that they could even do the screening effectively for free. So they invested their time, their effort, and a little bit of capital to really prove that model worked. And I think that if you think what will it take for AI to have its greatest impact, it's going to be more people that are prepared to take that step, invest a little bit to say, right, let's go out and see what we can really do with this AI technology. We know that it can link a cost here and a scan here to some value downstream, but let's build that community that can see in our institution how you link these bits of value together and how we really make an impact on patients' lives. And I think that's what it'll take, right? It's not here's the pre-baked cake that you can buy from the supermarket. It's having people out there that are willing to go out and bake this thing, that are going to pull the ingredients from all the different areas of the hospital, combine them into something that actually has massive impact for the patients, but also probably for the economics of healthcare. And that's what it'll take to really get AI to have its greatest impact.
That's exciting. Hopefully some of the listeners out there are ready to go out and bake a cake.
Absolutely. And we're there to help them.
Excellent. Right. You have the ingredients in the machinery. Well, Ben, thanks so much. This has been a real eye-opener for me, and also hopefully for a lot of our viewers. And it's been great to see all the things that you've done at Blackford, and you have a bunch of really smart people doing a lot of really great work. And it's been cool to see on my side.
Real pleasure to talk to you, and thanks again.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye. Bye, Ben. Bye, everybody.